Okay, I call the meeting to order. This being Tuesday, November 21st, 2023. Woodfin Town Council meeting. First item will be approval of the agenda. Do we have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, next item will be the consent agenda. Shannon?
Mayor, the consent agenda is really straightforward. I don't know that I really need to go over it. It's just meeting minutes, tax collection report, a resolution for surplus property. The only thing I might mention is the introduction of, actually it's not the introduction, it should be the adoption of ordinance 2023-25. This, per the statutes, this ordinance was introduced at last month's meeting and now is available for adoption. And that has to do with the town's public safety ordinances for weapons and firearms.
Okay, any question from the board?
Yes, sir, Mayor. One, and that exclusion, that weapons ordinance does not apply to our parks, correct?
It will apply to the items that were listed in the ordinance, so it would apply to the soccer fields and to the basketball court over at the community.
Not to Silverline Park.
Not to the park, sorry, not to Silverline Park over the side.
Well, state law allows you to ban them in, it has to be a sports facility,
Okay,
but it doesn't, but a park generally you can't ban.
okay. Thank you for that.
Any other comments or questions? We have a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Second,
Second.
any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the consent agenda is approved. Next item will be public comment.
Oh, no, next item.
Oh.
Not so fast there, Mr. Mayor.
And we had to thumb wrestle as to who would get to read the proclamation, so Mr. Lunsford is going to have the honor.
Okay, are you ready for it now? I'm gonna
Microphone.
read it off of here because it's a little bit bigger print.
Maybe we can show everybody, so we, frame proclamation for Jerry, so you can read along.
Yeah, and if I mess up, just slap me. This proclamation is whereas Jerry Villon's roots run deep in the town of Woodfin, embodying its values and spirits through his life and journey, whereas Jerry's unwavering commitment to sharing his extensive wealth of local and historical knowledge has enriched the lives of countless individuals, and whereas Jerry's indomitable public service ethos has been exemplified through his remarkable 47-year tenure as Buncombe County Emergency Service Director, steadfastly navigating through the challenges posed by events such as the blizzard of '93, the flood of 2004, and the solemn day of 9/11. And whereas Jerry's dedication to the community betterment led him to embrace the role of mayor for an impressive 5 terms, translating his passion into action for the betterment of his fellow citizens. Whereas Jerry's exemplary leadership and visionary spirit was pivotal in realization of the transformative Woodfin Greenway Blueway project, a testament to his dedication to enhancing the town's riverfront, thereby bestowing fresh avenues for both recreational pursuits and efficient transportation for the community's residents. And whereas Jerry's enduring support and guidance have served as a beacon of care, integrity, and courage for Woodfin community, shaping its growth and prosperity. And whereas Jerry's reputation as a paragon of honest and forthrightness to garner him widespread recognition and esteem, whereas Jerry void by Jerry's departure from the ranks of his colleagues will not only be a reminder of his absence, but also a testament to the kindness, humor he has brought to every interaction. Now, therefore, let it be known the proclamation stands as a tribute to Jerry V. Hunn's exceptional contribution and embodiment of his enduring legacy in Woodfin, an expression of gratitude for his lifelong dedication to the betterment of our community.
You're here.
Here, here.
to have another award to present, which Ronnie, unfortunately, I did not get processed in time
Oh,
where we could have it to give you, but we did nominate you for the Old North State Award that will be issued by the governor's office. So you said you'll come back to our meetings. So
I
if
will.
we get this, we're going to invite you back and we'll gift it to you at that time.
Well, thank you, I appreciate that.
And I certainly appreciate it. It's been a good ride to be the mayor for the town of Woodfin, and you always think, well, there's some things you could have done, but then you look at what has been done, and you just move on from there. So with that, where did we get to? All over the place.
The proclamation
Now we
requiring
can go
action.
on
No, okay.
to,
Public comment. Yeah, we've got two people signed up for public comment. One of them is Walt Brewer. Walt, you come up and identify yourself. Yeah.
Hi, Walt Brewer. And I just wanted to thank the board for allocating the funds for paving our road, Blue Forest Drive. I want to thank the staff for implementing it and getting it done. I'd like to say that the French Broad paving, the job that they did exceeded all of my expectations. They improved the grade, they were pleasant to work with. They patched places on Scenic View Drive that I did not expect to be patched, so, you know, it was just all good. Peggy and I both appreciate it, and all of my neighbors that have talked to me about it said the same thing. Thank you very much, and happy Thanksgiving.
Great.
Next we have Adam Smith.
All right. Well, thank you so much for having me, and congratulations, Mr. Mayor, to you.
Thank you.
I'm Adam Smith, as you just called. I'm a resident of Woodfin for 1 year now, and we've loved every moment of it. We're so excited to be here. I grew up in Asheville, and then went to Appalachian State University, then moved out west for about 17 years, so we just moved back after 17 years. So why am I here? Well, I'm here to voice my strong approval and request to pass the ADU measure that is up for consideration. So why would this be helpful to me and my wife? Well, as I just mentioned, I'm a newly married man, and we just got married in May. We just bought a house over here in Woodfin, something we were definitely not able to do in California. One of the reasons we came home, and we're so happy to be here. And we've lived here for a year. But like many people in our situations, young folks who just got married, we unfortunately are drowning in debt. As you can imagine, many millennials in my situation and folks of all ages. We have school loans, we have a mortgage, we have credit card payments, we have insurance payments, and by the end of the month, we just have nothing left. My wife is a second grade teacher, and I'm a sales manager, and we have, you know, a sustaining income, but by the end of the month, it's all gone. So having an ADU in our backyard is possibly our only chance to develop an income-generating source that could lead us to financial security. And it turns out that we have the perfect property for it. We live just across the street from the yoga studio. We are on the road. We have easy access. Our lot is private. It'd be easy to develop. And it's affordable for us to do, something we could actually afford to do. So that's a little bit about us, but what about the regulations? And I spoke with Marie about this, and she told me all about it. And we think that it's done right. We applaud the fact that these must be long-term rentals. We don't want to mess personally with short-term Airbnbs, and we understand the damage that they can cause to communities when they aren't regulated properly. We would just like to have one long-term tenant in our unit, like a traveling nurse, perhaps a yoga instructor, or just a local tenant. And as you know, Buncombe County has a housing issue. So we are confident that the parameters that you've set forth in this regulation will allow for more long-term housing for locals while benefiting locals such as ourselves as well. I'm also personally doubtful that many people are going to take this measure up and immediately build ADUs in their backyards. You have to have the right space, you have to meet the criteria, and you have to have the desire to do it. So I don't think they're going to be popping up everywhere. But for folks like us, a new couple, new to Woodfin, who are trying to build our future, this could be a vehicle to our financial security. So with that, I respectfully request that you pass this measure and allow ADUs in Woodfin. And thank you very much, and happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, anyone else wish to comment? That's the only two that signed up. Okay, moving on to presentation and reports. First one's ABC report. Tom?
Members of the council, mayor, I apologize for my phone. I am completely incompetent on knowing how to shut the phone down. And I hope it doesn't go off again. I think I shut it down, but I apologize. Rude and untimely. As far as the ABC store, this past fiscal year was flat, like the year before. We had, 3 years ago, we had a bankrupt year because of COVID. Our revenues were way up and we managed to hold that. But we stalled a bit. Don't have any particular reason for that other than it didn't help. It helped the restaurants, but it didn't help us when they reopened. We have very little mixed beverage business. One of the challenges we've had recently is staffing, and that probably doesn't come as a surprise to the town. Tammy's been real good in the past at finding good people, reliable people, and people that fit our culture, which is people that welcome our customers in the store, make them feel at home, help them out. But she's had a couple of hiccups recently. Some real short-term employees, they worked for a couple of weeks and found out it involved work. And that didn't suit them. But now we've got a full staff, good people, things are operating smoothly. One of the newer things we're doing is through using that new warehouse to overstock sale items. Our first two ventures, Tito's, vodka, and Maker's Mark. And it's a little early to tell how that's going to work. We know that both of them are going to move, that's not the question. But we expect that to give us a little boost in our profitability. A couple of challenges, expenses recently, when we had our final project for our building, we had to get the parking lot sealed, striped, new bumpers put in, and that was finally done. It cost about $7,000. And then one of our 17-year-old HVAC units died on us. It was at a good time because the weather kept us fairly comfortable. But we've got two complete estimates so far. We need two more, but it looks like it's going to probably cost us around $25,000. It's a little more than you might expect, but we've got a challenge for them. We don't have steps going up to the roof, and so they've got to hire a crane to get the units up there. Doesn't lend itself to a ladder. That'll pass. We just had our audit completed. We got a good clean report.
dropped a copy by here, Shannon, for you. And in the, there's always interest in the payments to the town. I bought back a check for $10,000, which the audit showed that we owed most of that. I know Shannon expressed a figure that comes out with the dollars and cents down there to the penny. We overpaid, okay? What we owe. We like round figures. But and we've also, the board voted to increase the quarterly payments by $5,000. So on an annual rate, that would work out to, instead of 60, we're at 70,000, 80,000, excuse me. And that's really all I've got to report, but we will take questions, try to provide answers.
Any questions for Tom?
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tom.
Combined service.
Okay, Shannon.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll just roll right into this month's town manager report. Reporting on contracts and purchase orders that have come in the last 30 days. We had 3. One contract with BH Grain, which is the landscape company that the town has used before, and also is the company that we've contracted with for snow removal. So this is an hourly contract depending on the snow event and what kind of snow we get, and also how extensive it is and how much work we need from them. We also renewed our contract with Granicus. This is the company that was formerly known as Host Compliance. They're the folks who help us with our short-term rental monitoring, and their data, the database that they create for us, is what we use for our enforcement efforts. And that is the same contract amount that we did last year. And then lastly, a contract with Equinox for a little over $62,000. This is for the Silverline Park Master Plan update, as well as the permit drawings for the new restroom facilities. Moving on to departmental updates in the administration department, we've been mostly focused on a few things this last month. The comprehensive plan and town hall feasibility study review. So both of those are pretty big initiatives that were started last year. They're coming to an end. We have our first draft set of documents for each plan and study, and staff is currently reviewing those, as well as the comprehensive plan is posted publicly, and we're taking comments on that right now. So there will be revised drafts that come out to complete the feasibility study and to adopt the comprehensive plan. We're not quite there yet, but we're closing in on the end. We've also been meeting with community members. The portion of Woodfin that's on the west side of the French Broad River, it's a pretty large area, a little over a square mile. Just meeting with them to try to better understand how the town can serve them better moving forward. I think it's fair to say they feel a little cut off and a little disenfranchised over the lack of attention in their part of the community. So we're trying to meet with them, try to understand what their concerns are, see what we can do to help them feel better about meeting with them. And then lastly, we are in the early stages of our council retreat planning. We're hoping to do that in February. The date has not been set yet. We are working on securing a facilitator for that and setting the agenda. In the police department, Chief Dykes is going to do a report here shortly on the traffic study data, or the traffic stop data that we've been collecting over the last 6 months, and he's got some information to share about our speed enforcement efforts. Other general announcements, Jonathan Ammons was Jonathan, hello, he's out in the hallway, you want to come in and say hi, was selected as our new patrol lieutenant. And as with a lot of our command positions, as we move Jonathan into the lieutenant's position, now we have to backfill his sergeant's position. So we'll be moving forward with that sergeant assessment process here in the near future. And then, of course, patrol officer recruitment is ongoing. I I presume that the sergeant assessment process is going to create another vacancy in our patrol staff, so we'll have to keep those efforts going. But it is, we do continue to get interested applicants, and we're just trying to pick the best ones, so. Moving on to Public Works and Facilities, we are entering the holiday season for our solid waste collection. We have unfortunately had a few accidents amongst the staff in the Public Works Department, not work-related accidents, just off-duty accidents that have left us a little bit shorthanded. So we're looking at hiring some temporary help just to get us through the holiday season. And then the work on the salt shed that we've been talking about for a little while has been delayed. The rebar that is necessary for the construction was unavailable, so we had to order that. And so we're waiting for that, and the contractor will get started as soon as that order comes in. In the planning department, I mentioned earlier, the comprehensive plan is posted. We are waiting to give people time to review the plan, submit their comments. They can submit those via email to myself or Ricky Hurley, our planning director, or there is an online form that folks can fill out and just submit their comments directly through the system. Once we get those comments collected, we share them with our consultants. The consultants will update the draft and repost the draft. So we'll probably have 3 versions of the draft. So right now we're in the first version. There'll be another intermediate version posted, and then there should be the final draft. And then some good news, the Hawthorne Senior Residences, which was a conditional zoning that you all approved earlier this year, it's located off of Reynolds Mountain Boulevard. You may recall that particular project, a larger residential project. They have submitted their detailed plans for final review for their zoning permit. So that's good news, because we have seen a little bit of a slowdown in residential construction, probably due to interest rates. But this is a larger project that is moving forward. In the stormwater department, we are at 64% of our stormwater fees have been collected. We are now, unfortunately, in the late notice phase, or the late phase. So we sent notices this week. They've all been issued at this point. So that will give people, they can still pay. Well, they'll have a little bit of time to go ahead and pay those stormwater bills. After this, it will go to collections, though. So we're hopeful that this second notice will bring in a lot of those overdue fees. We also learned last week from the North Carolina Department of Environmental Quality that our stormwater fine that we had received a while back was reduced. We had appealed that fine when we had received it. We had actually requested a full waiver. They did not support a full waiver, but they did reduce it by about 2/3, which I think under those circumstances was probably the best we could hope for. So we're pleased with that, and we've been communicating with their staff, and after the new year, we'll be meeting with them to talk about the stormwater management plan. And once we get that fully developed and they review it and approve it, then they will issue us our MS4 permit, and hopefully it'll be smooth sailing after that. In the Parks Department, the Silverline Park Master Plan update is in progress. We have received some information from the consultants that we're reviewing. I mentioned earlier that this update will also include permit drawings for the new restroom facilities that we're hoping to build in the next fiscal year. You wouldn't think restrooms would be very interesting, but it has proven to be really interesting. They're doing some really neat things with public restrooms these days, and it's just a matter of figuring out what kind of features work best in this environment. Are these new features worth the cost? Is it something that will be enduring? So these are the questions we're asking ourselves as we look through this information, but that is coming along nicely. Riverside Park and the Wave, the pre-bid meeting was completed last week, sorry. So we had a really good response. We were really pleased with the response. So we have a number of interested contractors. So we're optimistic that we'll meet our bid requirement when those come in. Based on the feedback in that meeting, though, we are extending the deadline one more week just to give folks a little bit more time. There was a really good dialogue from that meeting and that conversation. So we feel, we continue to feel very encouraged that things are going along very well on that project. We are also working with the French Broad River Academy on a volunteer agreement. They've approached the town, the French Broad River Academy is a private boys and girls school on the French Broad River, both campuses in Woodfin. And they're very invested in the river and in the community. And so they've approached us asking how they can be of assistance. They're really focused on the parks, thinking that that's probably the best fit. We agree. We think some volunteer assistance in the parks is probably the way to go. And so we're working with them on a few ideas, and we're going to iron out an agreement so we know what we can expect and what their responsibilities are versus what ours are. We are also looking forward to our new volunteer coordinator joining staff in January. This, I mentioned Zoe, I forget Zoe's last name, but she came to us through AmeriCorps. She'll be joining us as a part-time staffer in the winter, and she's going to help us coordinate some of this volunteer work. So this agreement with the French Broad River Academy will be a great first project for Zoe to dive into. Also, our Taylor's Wave Task Force work has been completed. The task force met every week for, I think, 6 months. And had a very specific deliverable that they were interested in providing. They have put those documents together, they've been shared with staff, and they're now currently reviewed by our Parks and Improvements Advisory Committee. So they'll have the opportunity, that committee will have the opportunity to weigh in, and then eventually we'll be able to turn that into a new town policy. And that concludes my town manager report. If there aren't any questions, I'll turn it over to Chief for his update.
Well, good evening. The reason I'm here this evening to present, not just from the camera, is we had been getting some guidance from this council to start analyzing our traffic stops, using a model that was implemented actually here in North Carolina. Quick background, where North Carolina became the first state to require the collection of data when they stop vehicles. Started in 2000 with the Highway Patrol, 2002. Other agencies came on board, but they had to meet certain criteria, which was population of 10,000 more, and there's an asterisk on that. It also included if they had X amount of officers per 1,000 residents, and also state agencies such as ALE, campus law enforcement, those folks were required to do it. However, we are not 10,000 people yet. I have no doubt we will get there someday, but not yet. However, we started collecting this data, and we're trying to figure out how we can best examine this data and use this data to make sure that we're doing things right. So again, back in March, we kind of received that directive or that guidance from the council. We immediately began working with our software folks through Buncombe County IT so that we could activate the module that we have available to us in our mobile computers. We implemented some training, we developed training for our officers, and then in May we began collecting that data. As of right now, we're just using that internally. We are not submitting it to the state yet. There's an asterisk on that because we're working on that. That's the next step. We know that we're going to get to that. We'll be submitting that to the state. And again, that's when we reach a population of 10,000 residents and or we demonstrate proficiency with the module, and then we're going to leave, for example, for other agencies of our size. Now, what's demonstrating proficiency? That is making sure that we're actually collecting the data on each of the stops, that we're entering the data correctly, which is something we've already found in the challenge of what we're doing, where some of the officers were missing a box. And so we've had some training to make sure that they're getting that. Once we know that we were getting that data collected the right way, and also we work with our partners on that, then we'll look at submitting that to the state. So in the 6 months that we've been running or collecting this data, we've been able to generate some internal reports. These are not what the state puts on their website, not the SBI website. This is what they draw the data from, but this is not how it appears on their part. So just kind of looking at the raw numbers, that's what we get back when we run the report of, number of traffic stops, the reasons for the stop, and then we're gonna break it down by race and ethnicity. Okay, and again, that's kind of the raw data for that. And then we also have, well, what did we do with those stops? What was the disposition, right? What was the outcome for those? And those could be arrest, a citation issued, no action taken, a verbal warning, or a written warning. And then we also broke those down by race and ethnicity. Okay, so there's kind of the raw data, but let's look at these in a kind of easier to chew format. All right, so during the 6 months of our study, we made 311, or we recorded 311 traffic stops through our module. And when we break those down by race, we see that 272 of the 311 were white, 31 black, 2 Asian, 1 Native American, and 5 other. All right, and that has the percentages next to them. And then when we look at ethnicity, which is the box there on the right, 258 of the 311 were non-Hispanic, 30 were Hispanic ethnicity, and 23 unknown. And that's actually where we had that data issue, because if the box was left blank, it generates it as an unknown. So we believe that, again, by training with our officers and figuring out, hey, you can't leave that box blank, we'll have less unknowns in the future. All right. So then why were we stopping people? Out of the 311 stops that we had, what were the biggest issues we had? And we've broken these into categories, not this specific offense, but general categories. And as we go down through, if you're looking at the right-hand side of the total, you see our biggest numbers show up in the areas of unsafe movement, speeding violations, equipment violations, and regulatory violations. Now, what are those? Well, speeding, that one's pretty simple. Folks know what speeding is. And we'll talk about some speeding here in a minute. But then we also have unsafe movement. Well, what is unsafe movement? That's things such as following too closely, going across the double yellow line, pulling out in front of somebody, which are actually all things I saw this afternoon while I was going to get lunch, right? These are the driving behaviors that we're stopping people for. Equipment violations, headlights, taillights, right? Those safety things that we want to have on vehicles that are working. And then regulatory violations. And regulatory violations is expired tags or no insurance on a vehicle. Okay, so those are the things that we're stopping folks for. All right, well, what did we do? Oh, I'm sorry, and then looking at the breakdown, let me actually run that one back just a minute. Breaking that down by race, we look kind of towards the left-hand side of where were those numbers at. Okay, and you can kind of see where those run down through there.
Chief, excuse me.
Yes, sir.
Can you go back a couple of slides? I'm confused. I see white, black, Asian, Native American, other, non-Hispanic, Hispanic. If you go back one more slide, are your officers asking, are you Hispanic? Are they asking, are you?
We, again, and this is one of the issues that we have, and we're looking for some training and some guidance. Some of those things we make, we'll call educated guesses on. Because our driver's license in North Carolina, some of them have that information and some of them don't. And then also out-of-state licenses, which we deal with those as well, may or may not list race and or ethnicity. I will tell you from personal knowledge of North Carolina DMV, that Hispanic drivers can be listed as either white or Hispanic on their driver's license. And so there's some consistency issues there within even the DMV.
So you're trying, in most cases, you're able to capture that data by the driver's license itself?
In most cases, yes.
Okay.
Not all cases.
Gotcha.
And then at that point, our officers are making what we like to call an educated guess. And that's also one of the training points that we put out for our officers, especially when we get to the things such as other or unknown, right? How do we determine race and or ethnicity of folks and do it in a respectful manner? Because we want to capture data as accurate as we can, right? We've all heard the adage, garbage in, garbage out. If we're not getting good data to begin with, then we can't produce good data and learn from it afterwards. So we're trying to find ways, and that's actually one of our next steps, of how can we better refine this, what better training, how can we better work with other agencies to more accurately capture those demographics.
Thank you, that helped, that answered my question, thank you.
All right. And then again, looking at the, those same, stops, where we're stopping people, we talked about by race, and then here's by ethnicity, breaking that down again into raw numbers. And then we just get a summary, of, again, why would folks, I'm sorry. The next one is the outcome of what happened when folks were stopped, and this is by race. And it shows male, female, and then the percentage by race next to each. So out of the total number that were arrested, in this case you had, 80% of those that were arrested were white, 20% were black. Citations, 87.7% white, 11% black, 1% other. And again, we want to be careful with that other, and that's our training issue. Written warnings, verbal warnings, and then no action. And then when we look at that by ethnicity, again, non-Hispanic, 90% for arrest, 10% of the arrests, which you can see was 2 arrests, was 10% citations, 82% for non-Hispanic, Hispanic 12.3%, unknown 5.5%, and down through. All right, so now that we have this data, what are we going to do with it? Well, one of our first goals is to get to the point where we are submitting this data automatically to the state. And we have that ability. We're currently working with Buncombe County IT, our software provider, and the SBI, so that at the end of each month, the report's automatically generated, sent to the state. And then actually that kind of gives down to that bottom point, because then that makes that information available to the public. Anyone can go onto the SBI's website, go to their traffic stop data analysis page, for traffic stop statistics, look for Woodfin, and it would show all that information. Okay, but why did we use that data? Again, we want to look at that data, review it, and make sure that we're doing the right things, that we're using the best practices. Also, we want to find out what the shortcomings are. And we are already running into that with this information. What's not part of the module that would help, right? Such as residency. When we talk about all these stops, one of the things it doesn't ask is, are these folks residents of Woodfin? Are they residents of Buncombe County? Are they even residents of North Carolina? And we know from the data coming in, and also many studies that have been published, that most drivers that are stopped within a jurisdiction aren't residents of that jurisdiction. And that's more so for small jurisdictions than larger places. Okay, so that's one of the things that we want to work with other agencies to figure out, hey, how can we get this information more accurate and better apply to us? And then we also want to take this information and make sure that we're maintaining relevant training, that we're doing, our non-biased policing, that we are looking at, the just best practices throughout the industry. And then we've already talked about making that public. So any questions about the traffic stop analysis or the data that we're seeing?
I don't have a question, but if you don't, can you mind going back to keep going, yes, that's fine. So in reviewing this data, I learned some things from Chief in reviewing this with him, and a couple of things I wanted to mention is some of the, like the unsafe movement, the equipment violation, the regulatory violations. I was surprised to see how many there were. But I learned from Chief, for instance, the unsafe movement oftentimes can result in identifying an impaired driver, as an example. But it doesn't get recorded as a DWI. It often gets recorded, at least initially, as that unsafe movement. So there are reasons and explanations for a lot of these. Also the equipment violation, the regulatory violation, not as big of a, there's a safety concern, but maybe not as much as some of these others. But when you look and you compare that with the number of verbal warnings issued, a lot of these, almost all of these are gonna be verbal warnings. So just because you're being stopped for an equipment violation doesn't mean you're getting a citation or you're, getting penalized or anything. A lot of times these are just, hey, maybe you can get that fixed, or your tags are expired, okay, it's only been 2 weeks. Just a reminder, you better get that taken care of here before too long, it's that kind of interaction, so it's not all negative.
And that's actually, Shannon points that out, and that's another shortcoming that we have with our current software. Because it doesn't say, well, they were stopped for this, and then this is the action that went with it. So we can't look at how many equipment violations received, verbal warnings, written warnings, citations, et cetera, right? It doesn't break that data down for us. So, we can't, we would love to have that information to know, hey, how many tickets are we writing for regulatory violations, right, for expired tags, and then break those down into the demographics from this data. But that's not what that report does for us.
Speeding violations, are all warnings written or some written, some verbal?
It depends on it depends. And that's what we have some officer discretion. I'll speak from my own experience. If I pull somebody over and they're doing 10 over, they never had a ticket in their life. That might be we have a little conversation to slow down, and I might give them a verbal warning or even maybe a written warning. They're doing 15 over, and I can look on their driver's history, they've had 3 tickets within the last 3 years. They're probably going to get an actual citation out of that one, right? So we look at this, we use some officer discretion, and we try to figure out what's going to be most effective for folks.
Does a verbal warning go on to the database at all, or that won't follow them?
So
For speeding?
For speeding, so the verbal warning and even the written warnings aren't something that are accessible to the officers in their vehicles, right? We can't pull that information up. We can track it kind of internally, but it's not something that they can pull up on the side of the road. But, again, depending on what it is, I found that, I stopped a 17-year-old for speeding their first time. I'll give them a written warning and tell them to go show it to their parents, right? That's probably more effective than me just telling them to slow down or maybe even writing them a ticket. So, but we can't track that. We don't have a way to pull that back. We are hopeful that maybe when we upgrade our software, when we're looking at new records management software, that we'll be able to incorporate what's done with our citation system into that, but currently we don't have that capability.
Michael, and another thing, you pull a car over for a tag light out, regulatory, and you walk up there and they don't have their seatbelt on, and they got an open container. Does that show up as 3 or 1?
It does. So again, as Shannon pointed out, the only thing that's going to show is the initial reason
That's
for
what
the
I
stop.
thought.
Right. So if we pull them over because they've got a brake light out, and we walk up and they're wanted for homicide out of another state,
So that don't show up.
all it shows on that is that we made a stop for an equipment violation, and we had an arrest. It doesn't show, and then again, it doesn't even track, that this equipment violation resulted in an arrest. It just says we had an equipment violation and we had an arrest, right? There's no nexus between them.
So that ain't right.
Right, and that, again, some of the shortcomings that we have with what's here in place right now.
And I'm assuming, Chief, you almost can't, practically can't capture all your DWIs or DUIs because you can't immediately assess that unless you just know.
Right, and so when you
Feelings where
see these
just-
DWIs here as the initial reason for stop, usually those are ones that are given out as a BOLA or attempt to locate. We've got a possible impaired driver that's on the roadway, or the officers develop enough indicators for reasonable articulable suspicion to think, hey, this person's probably impaired. They were driving under the speed limit. They were weaving within the lane. They weren't actually committing a lane violation. They stopped at the red light. The light turned green, and they sat there for 20 seconds before they finally went. And then when they turned, they went really wide around. Right? So for us, that's building all these things up. and we say, I'm stopping for DWI, under suspicion of DWI. Those are rare when we do it that way. You know, a lot of times we'll stop somebody because they go over the double yellow line. Okay, great. We now have an unsafe movement violation. Further investigation says they're impaired, we take them to jail, but we don't record it as a DWI, we record the initial reason for the stop.
Because you won't even, don't you have to give a second assessment at some later time so you can assess whether you had a good breathalyzer the first time and that sort of thing?
Right.
Asking for a friend. Okay.
It's crazy, I think. It's like a blood draw. It could be weeks or months before you get the results back. And that to me is just crazy,
All depends, yeah.
crazy.
Any other questions about our traffic stop data? Then I'm going to move on to another issue that we've been talking about, which is our traffic speed. You know, obviously this is something that, again, the council has raised some issues or some concerns with. Our citizens have raised concerns with. And for us, for me, this is always one that, you know, I'm invested in. You know, I think speed enforcement is important. It saves lives. That's the number one reason that we need speed enforcement. So we've taken a multifaceted approach to this. You know, when we had talked about this previously, this is a joint effort, right? It's not going to be solved by the police department alone. Though we're going to try. We're going to do our best. We're going to do our part. But there are other things that are going on, such as the staff working to look at improving pedestrian safety. We've talked with DOT. We're trying to find solutions. Actually, DOT was helpful in some of the things that we are bringing into place. So we began an initiative to reduce speed. And one of the facets, the first facet is increased visibility. Right? So beginning in October, I put out a directive that our officers are to go to what we've defined as our high complaint areas and log their visibility in the area. Right? Do their speed enforcement, be seen in these areas. And then we've identified Elk Mountain Road, Riverside Drive, Old Burnsville Hill, Woodfin Avenue, and Riverwalk subdivision as our highest priority areas. Now, these are fluid. They may change. We might get some complaints in next week about Brown Avenue. And if so, we'll park in the mayor's driveway or right next to it and be seen as people come flying up and down Brown Avenue, down that hill. But since we began that, since October 21st through 11/16, that's the last date that I pulled the data from, we've logged 146 enforcement patrols within those areas in an effort to reduce speeding. Right? So we're being seen. That's number one. Number two is raised awareness, and this is a project we're working on right now through North Carolina Governor's Highway Safety. We've applied to them. We cashed in our points from the campaigns that we participated in to get a digital speed sign. We mount this under a posted speed sign, like you see in the example here. It says what the speed limit is and then their speed. So that's the awareness part. We're looking to get a total of 2 of those. And then we'd also like to get a speed trailer, which is more mobile, right? We find a one area that definitely needs some speed enforcement. We mount the speed signs, but those are going to be there for a while. We coordinate with DOT. We have them help us get those in place. The speed trailer we can drag to any location from day to day. Right, so that's the next part is awareness. If folks know that they're going fast, they will slow down.
I want to say, I've noticed a difference, and they were there today, matter of fact, but I've noticed a difference on my road. It's really helped.
And then the last thing is communication. We've been utilizing our social media to put messages out, especially such as the campaigns we talked about through North Carolina Governor's Highway Safety Program. And in fact, yesterday began the Thanksgiving Day Click It or Ticket program. So we put a post out on our Facebook saying, hey, it's Click It or Ticket. We're going to be out there watching. Be safe over the Thanksgiving holidays, but we're going to be out making sure you're wearing your seatbelts and driving safely. So, again, it's a multifaceted approach. We want to do everything we can to reduce speed. Again, you know, reducing speed saves lives, and that's kind of the business we're in. Any questions about our speed enforcement campaign?
I thank you for picking up the pace. Appreciate that.
We're glad to do it. All right, thank y'all.
Okay, moving on to new business. We've got a public hearing coming up. I guess you're gonna explain what everything is, so go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. Going to a whole different direction here with zoning text amendment. So we have a proposed text amendment to add accessory dwelling units to our zoning code. Right now, we have, again, some zoning districts like R7 and R10, which allow for multifamily. So it's usually a second principal dwelling, like a duplex. But you usually have to have additional lot area to do the second dwelling. So if you got a 10,000 square foot lot, you usually need about another 7,000, 8,000 square feet to do the second. What the text amendment would do, it allows somebody to actually add a smaller subordinate or accessory dwelling unit that's smaller to their property as either detached or a basement renovation or a small addition onto the house. As well as add this as a limited use. So if you look at our code, we have a lot of blank spaces, which means you don't do it. We have some X's, which is here's where it goes. We have some S's in there a little bit, and then we have an L. I think Shannon, you had added L's to the table about a year ago, if I'm remembering. So so this should be about our fourth or fifth limited use. And what that means is that it's allowed, but you've got to check all the boxes. So if you meet 1, 2, 3, 4 standards, then you can do it. It's not just a free-for-all. But going through the slide here, we've got, it adds it, like I said, we'll define what an ADU is, and then on the limited use regulations, we'll add it to all the residential zoning districts. We'll set a maximum square foot limit when it's detached, like in a garage or just a freestanding cottage, or it's attached, like an addition or a wing that they've added on. That won't apply if they're remodeling. So if you've got your nice 75 ranch model home with full basement, 3, 2 upstairs, we'd allow for somebody to do a full conversion or a partial conversion on the bottom floor, as long as they're not adding onto the house. Next bullet here. We require those ADUs, and especially if they're detached, to be behind the main dwelling. That's the principle. And the planning board recommended that we allow that be accepted when it's over 2 acres. So if you have a larger tract of property and you want to build something in front of the home, they felt like 2 acres would be exceptional enough that somebody could build something up front. We also had a lot of concerns about conversion of a non-conforming garage, so we backed off, and if you have like a storage building, a garage that's like 2 feet off the property line and don't be curb setbacks, you would not be able to convert that. The intensity of the use, when you just have a car that pulls in, parks, doors go open down, and that's it, versus somebody living there all night cooking, sitting on a patio, that's a lot more intensive and disruptive than just a car driving in for 30 minutes or something. And then we clarified that there's no additional land area required for an ADU, and we would require additional parking. So if you're required to have 2 spaces for the main house and you build a 1-bedroom ADU, then we'll have 1 more parking spot required, so that we're not pushing onto the street. Any questions about?
I got a question.
Yes, sir.
Why would you have a maximum size if you got lot for it?
If somebody has plenty of land area, then they're able to do a duplex or a dwelling. We wouldn't restrict it. But we have a lot of lots in town that are either not wide enough,
Right.
or they've only got a 10, 11,000 square foot lot, and there are 10. So they can't have the second dwelling at all. They're just completely shut out. And we've had those requests for somebody's like, they're like, my mom and dad, they're up at age, and we'd like to renovate a space in the basement and create a whole other dwelling for them. Or the reverse, I have kids with grandchildren, and they can live here, and I can move into a smaller spot and downsize.
Are you asking about the size of the unit? Like,
Yeah.
limit the size
Well,
of the
that
unit?
number 2 there,
I'm sorry.
Ricky, I might messed you
I'm
up.
sorry.
You know, it says establish a maximum size square foot limit for a detached unit. So if I've got an acre lot
Uh-huh.
and I want to build a 1,200 square foot garage beside my house, I can't do it.
You could build the 12, because we're not regulating accessory structures. So if your garage is 1,200 square foot, then we have a coverage limit, but that wouldn't apply to the garage.
Okay,
'cause
that
that's not a
just
dwelling.
confused me.
For an accessory structure that somebody's not living in, but if you're gonna add another home.
Sure, now I understand that.
Yeah.
But
Now-
that says for a detached or attached unit, it doesn't say a home. And I just took
Yeah,
that.
all of this is about dwellings.
Oh,
It's
okay,
80
I'm
foot
sorry,
dwellings, yeah.
okay.
And if you had enough land to divide it up. and
Sure.
build, you
Sure.
could build
Sure.
whatever size of dwelling the land would support and still meet setbacks and so
Yeah.
forth. You just subdivide it.
Right.
Correct.
And some of our zoning districts that would allow accessory units also allow multifamily units. So if you happen to have a large enough piece of property, and you want 2 homes on the property, like John has said, you could subdivide.
I
Or
got
you
you.
could just have.
I'm
2 or 3
sorry, I
units.
kind of took that for any dwelling. It says accessory dwelling unit, but I understand now.
Good question, though.
We have accessory buildings,
Yeah.
and
Yeah, yeah. Yes, good. You're asking a question that maybe people at home are not following,
I got you.
so that's fine. That's a good.
Question.
Yes, sir.
Does an ADU get an address?
Yes, it's a dwelling unit. Yeah, that would be addressed by Buncombe County.
Okay.
So. Now, I won't run that right now, quiet. I just like to know too much. So anyway, like I said, the planning board, they did see this initial draft in August, and we ground on that in September, and then we actually brought it back in October. So they've actually seen this draft and have worked it over, this text particularly for 3 different meetings. And they voted in October to 5-0 to approve it, recommend approval to y'all. And we feel like it's a good step in the right direction to do some like additional density without being a lot of disruption or adding a bunch more driveways or a bunch of big buildings. And kind of continue with that. So with that, I'll put the mayor open for the public
Excellent.
hearing, right? You want to-
Oh, we didn't have the public hearing yet.
For public hearing.
Okay, before I open this public hearing, does anybody have any questions? All right, I will open this public hearing at 6 o'clock. Does anyone wish to speak? Yeah, if you can come up and identify yourself again. and-
Yes, sure.
Yeah, 3 minutes.
Absolutely, okay. Thanks for having me back. It's great to be back. No, I just wanted to reiterate that for folks like us, a young couple who were able to buy a house here just across the street, this is a fantastic thing for us. We don't have the means to buy another house and turn it into a rental property. All that we can do, we were able to renovate our house and take out a HELOC loan, and, you know, that's very limited. What we can do with that is build an ADU, and that is something that we can do to, you know, try and develop some financial security. So I think with the regulations you have in place, this is the perfect thing to pass for folks just like us. It's, you know, it's very controlled. Again, I don't think that many people are actually gonna do it. You have to meet all of the criteria. And we were just lucky enough to be able to meet the criteria that are proposed, and it would be an extreme help for us. And it would help us, hopefully one day, be in a good financial situation, while providing a long-term dwelling unit for a local resident. And that's what we would be after. So thank you for the consideration. I think it's a great thing.
Thanks for coming.
Okay.
Mayor, if I could just mention one more thing. Mr. Smith mentioned this earlier in his presentation, but I think we neglected to cover it, is that these accessory units could not be used as short-term rentals.
Right.
So that is one of the regulations that is being proposed. So.
And I just wondered, I think that's a wonderful thing. I'm a firm believer in, controlling Airbnb so it doesn't take over our communities. And so I think it's a wonderful thing and a great idea to make sure that, it provides long-term housing to people who live and contribute to this community.
Did you used to be a runner in school?
Yes?
Thought so. We met before, go ahead, I'm just curious.
At Carolina Day School, perhaps. I was a track and cross-country runner.
Councilman Edgerton is watching by video and he says hello.
Ah,
Okay.
okay.
Great to see you. Well, thank you very much.
Okay,
you.
anyone else
Thank you.
anyone else wish to speak?
We try not to be stuffy all the time.
Anyone else wish to speak? Okay, hearing none, I'll close this public hearing at 6:03 PM. Do we have a motion from the board?
I move to approve the proposed text amendment, subject to the following additional conditions, and
We don't have any.
we don't have any. We find that it's reasonable and that public interest is consistent with the Town of Woodfin Comprehensive Plan and meets the development needs of the community, and that the request, one, provides additional clarity and predictability to developmental requirements, thereby supporting economic development. And two, it ensures that the town's planning, zoning, and permitting processes facilitate sustained and positive development and support the needs of business and industry. Three, preserve and enhance Woodfin's open space, natural environment, and community character. And four, it promotes an integrated mix of housing types and affordability options.
Okay, do we have a second to that motion?
Second.
Have a motion and a second, any discussion?
Mayor, I've read quite a bit about this once I realized it was coming, and a number of cities around the country have been doing this for years, and I didn't read any studies that said they had a negative effect, but I read several articles that said they were actually having a very positive effect and getting rave reviews from towns big and small, so I'm glad we're doing it. We need places for people to live.
Okay, any more comments? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries. We need to have a closed session. Okay, do we have anything else to come before the board? If not, do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Any discussion?
It's been a pleasure.